In its 2015 Global Risk Report, the United Nations estimated that over the last decade, the world has lost more than 700,000 lives to natural disasters like hurricanes, cyclones, tornadoes, and earthquakes. In addition, the world has seen more than 1.3 trillion United States dollars worth of economic assets be destroyed by the same natural disasters. As a result, there has been a global push to find new ways to counteract natural disasters and prepare adequately for them. The United Nations created the Yokohama Strategy for a Safer World. Named after a city in Japan that was devastated by a horrible earthquake, it set forth the significance of combating natural disasters. In 2005, the United Nations approved the Sendai Framework for combating natural disasters. Hyogo was also the name of a Japanese town razed by a massive earthquake just a few years earlier. And now, in 2015, the United Nations has approved a new plan, the Sendai Framework for Natural Disaster Risk Prevention. Sendai is also the name of a Japanese town that was devastated by a huge earthquake several years ago. With all of these problems of natural disasters, it becomes a potent question for the planning communities, many of whom have attracted the dissatisfaction of countries who do not believe that simple frameworks and plans are enough to combat natural disasters. They have the question, which natural disaster is the Sendai Framework least prepared for? And given the names of Sendai and all of its predecessors, the answer may be disastrously ironic. The Sendai Framework is least prepared to deal with earthquakes because they are impossible to predict, they are unable to resolve with pre-planning, and their difficulties with aftershocks make recovery much more complicated. But the first reason that earthquakes are the natural disaster least prepared for under the Sendai Initiative has to do with a cruel truth that is brought forth by the U.S. Geological Survey. In a report from March 15th, the USGS points out the sad truth. Scientists cannot predict when earthquakes can happen. Seismological research can show where earthquakes are likely to happen, but they cannot predict with any degree of certainty when exactly they will take place, what their magnitude will be, or how likely they are to occur again. And this is something that the USGS does not see changing in the future, no matter how much technology advances. This strikes a key arrow against one of the main tenets of the Sendai Framework, prediction. The Sendai Framework is focused on identifying areas that are prone to natural disasters and when those natural disasters will occur, allocating international funding as well as using local incentive-based programs to prepare for the difficulties that lie ahead. With earthquakes, since these difficulties cannot be predicted, it is very difficult for the incentive schemes to work. According to a report published by the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, the incentive schemes, which make up a big part of one of the ways that the Sendai Framework is supposed to be innovative, allocate millions or billions of dollars. They ask for local governments to set aside that much money and then, based on the natural disasters that it faces, allocate them towards encouraging companies and local organizations to make the necessary preparations. Most of that funding, however, will probably go to preparations for earthquakes or for hurricanes or wildfires, because those are much easier to predict than earthquakes. And it leaves a difficult crossroads for people who are trying to decide how to dole out the investment funds. But the second reason that the Sendai Framework is not particularly well prepared for earthquakes is that it rests on pre-planning. Pre-planning is another major tenet of the Sendai Framework. According to The Guardian in a June 1st article, pre-planning is a supposedly innovative way in which the Sendai Framework will capture the help of global corporations in helping prevent the impact of natural disasters. The idea of pre-planning is that since near coastal areas, which are susceptible to hurricanes and cyclones, are important economic assets for companies and countries all over the world, it's an easy way to incentivize them to invest in natural defenses. New technology, reinforcements for buildings, and smarter pre-planning when new cities or new corporate bases are created within restrictions that will make them less susceptible to natural disasters, all hinge on the idea that new areas are going to be invested in and that new companies will have a vested interest in making sure that those areas are safe without cutting corners economically. But this isn't necessarily the case for earthquake-prone areas. According to a National Geographic report from February 12th, some of the areas, like Morocco, that are most prone to earthquakes have at-risk areas that have already been built. The villages of Morocco that are on the coast are right at the edge of the Nubian tectonic plate in Africa. And very few global corporations are going to be interested in investing in the reinforcements necessary to protect it from an earthquake. This is where the pre-planning tenet of Sendai falls short on helping prevent earthquakes and their impact. But the final area where earthquakes throw the Sendai framework for an unnecessary loop is dealing with aftershocks. This disrupts the recovery plan that the Sendai framework sets forth. One of the biggest pieces that Sendai advocates for in recovery is using it as an opportunity to convince people that new investments need to be made. Since buildings and important parts of communities have been destroyed by hurricanes or tornadoes, recovery and rehabilitation is a chance to put new money and new structures into building them back right. But building them back right is very difficult to do when earthquake aftershocks continue on. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, in a report from May 12th, Nepal, a country that in April was racked by a more than 7.0 magnitude earthquake, has seen more than 100 aftershocks in the month following. And on May 12th, it experienced a 7.3 magnitude aftershock. These are very difficult situations for recovery teams to work in, and they do not have the same level of confidence as needed for the Sendai Framework's plan to build back communities right. The report shows that a level of logistical superiority is needed. Search and rescue teams have to be brought in from the United States to help Nepali citizens because the aftershock environment has so much uncertainty that it is not a good place for rehabilitation to take place. It will be months after Nepal is ready to really bring in the kind of economic investment and recalculated rehabilitation that the Sendai Framework advocates for. And while it makes sense for countries that are hit by hurricanes, it doesn't fit the paradigm of the aftermath of an earthquake. For these reasons, the Sendai Framework falls short of several important disaster risk reduction criteria for earthquakes, and it makes it very difficult for Sendai, Hyogo, and Yokohama, all predecessors named after Japanese cities struck by earthquakes, to truly claim proficiency in preventing their natural risk disasters again.